Hi, welcome to my video. I'm going to be talking about the offensive and defensive structure evolution, which just means like as animals evolved, what structures appeared for offense and defense specifically. So this means I'm not talking about camouflage or pheromones, as those are both not structures. So yeah, let's get into it. So as animals started to appear, some fed on others, like this T-Rex who fed on other dinosaurs. This led to a variety of methods for survival among animals in order for them to kill easier, to get food easier, or to not be killed. Most believe that in order to hunt more effectively, predators evolved structures like sharp claws, like this T-Rex has, even though they're tiny, they're still sharp, and teeth to tear through flesh, like this T-Rex has as well, which is what most people imagine it uses when it hunts, or poison to paralyze, or venom to paralyze or kill prey. And in order to protect themselves, animals developed hard outer shells that hurt attackers, quills, horns like this Triceratops has, and resistance to those venoms that the predators had. But is that sequence of events really true? Did we go from attackers getting the head start and then defenses coming into play afterwards? Well, to start, we actually have to look at the first evidence of a defensive-oriented structure in an animal, which is going to be found in Cloudina. Cloudina was around about 550 million years ago, or like that's when it first appeared, and it has an outer shell which was made of cone-like, as you can see these little cones, calcium carbonate tubes, like what you see shells are made of, like on clams and stuff like that. Cloudina is recognized as the first animal to develop hard mineralized outer shells, and it happened just before the Cambrian explosion. So now we look at Anomalocaris, the world's animal, was also 10 million years after Cloudina, around 540 million years ago. It was an animal that had large spiny pincer-like frontal claws, as we see here. It has these frontal claws with like kinda these little tentacle things that kind of just hold on to stuff a little bit. And it is considered among many to be the world's first apex predator. Now, some of you might be wondering what the Cambrian explosion is. The Cambrian explosion took place around 540 million years ago, around the same time as the Anomalocaris, and was an evolutionary arms race leading to the emergence of many new species, including the first fish. It occurred before animals lived on land. As you can see, this arms race led to more animals having hard shells, such as this nautilus over here in the corner. It also led to exoskeletons, such as this horseshoe crab down here, and these are generally in order to protect the animal from others. Some developed spikes, as you can see up top left over here, and spines, further deterring predators from eating them. The predators, on the other hand, developed claws-like appendages like we see in the Anomalocaris to grab prey, and sharp needle-like mouth parts to puncture the shells of smaller prey. You can't see it, but this tube worm down here does have one. Around 450 million years ago, animals actually developed their first jaws from the gill arches in bodies. This allowed them to hold better onto prey and digest larger prey. So, before, this Anomalocaris has a small mouth between, like under there, that's just a circular hole pretty much, kind of like this tube worm right here. So we later see the emergence of jaws, which would allow them to eat bigger animals and larger prey, and also just make them better hunters. Then, around 420 million years ago, armor plating was evolved in fish, along with fin spikes. So you see these spikes on these fish, like in the fins, like the top fins. I believe there's some on the bottom fins there as well. But the armor would make it harder for animals to puncture these fish and actually get to their flesh and eat them. And the spikes would poke the mouths of predators, deterring them from eating them. And then also, if they did get eaten, they would pretty much get stuck in the predator's mouth and not be very good. Sometimes cutting through the passageway, or getting stuck and stopping them from eating further. And then soon after, these predators who wanted to get through these spiky fins and armor plating developed teeth. This allowed them to specialize their hunting methods. For example, needle teeth were used to grab fish. As you can see, they would puncture into the fish itself and not let it escape. You can see it's kind of pointy there, so it would be pretty easy to do so. Then we had serrated teeth. This was made for slicing flesh, so if they went after, let's say, a soft-bodied fish, it would make it easy to tear off chunks into sizable pieces and eat larger prey in that way. Then we had crushing teeth, which were used to break the hard outer shells of the animals we saw, like in the Cambrian explosion image. We see a lot of them with these harder outer shells, so the crushing teeth allows them to break those shells easier and actually get to the flesh underneath. And lastly, we saw recurved teeth, kind of like the needle teeth, but these also help with, if they swallow a fish whole, they would keep the animal trapped inside better than the other ones. Now, after we get through this whole era, we have to talk about the land animals. We know that fish have all these cool traits and stuff, and animals came from fish, but did the structures that the fish had go directly towards the same ones the animals have? And the answer is not really. So about 375 to 360 million years ago, lobe-finned fish, the ancestors, there were about 7 species of them, started moving onto land. Now, some things that we note from the lobe-finned fish that it had, in terms of structures that we've talked about previously, was that it had jaws and teeth, and it also had the same armor plating. It was just less, more lightweight, less restricting in them, and less heavy. Descendants over time evolved to have the characteristics we all know and see today, such as claws and stuff, after they split off from these lobe-finned fish and became their own unique species with unique traits. So as I mentioned earlier, some of these new species that descended from the lobe-finned fish developed claws with a variety of structures and types. As we see, the talons of a bird of prey are kind of spread out with really sharp claws and hooked claws made for grabbing. We have dog claws, which in nature would be sharper and would be used more for clawing and like slashing. And same with the cats, who use theirs for slashing and grabbing as well. Then we see those who evolved thick and loose skin, like the elephant, as you can see around its ankles where there's more skin, or like where gravity doesn't affect as much, it bunches up there because it's so loose, kind of like with a shirt. If you grab it at 2 points, the 2 points you grab it from will be smooth, whereas the lower parts where it's just dangling is really wrinkly. And also the honey badgers, who aren't deterred, which for a fun fact, aren't deterred by bees because they have high pain tolerance and their thick skin makes most stings pretty much ineffective. It's really hard to pierce their skin, so it allows them to eat despite being swarmed. Then we have animals who evolve defense, like the armor and quills of the armadillo and porcupine. Most people know about the armadillo. It's strong enough to even deflect bullets. There's a couple cases where I think there's one case where a guy even got killed after he shot it because it redirected at him. And then the porcupines are famous for being filled with a back full of quills that will puncture any predators that try to eat it. And then we have venom and poison. Venom is anything that is injected into another animal. So, for example, snakes are venomous because they inject their poison, or their toxin, I should say, into another animal, whereas the poison dart frog is poisonous because if you eat it or lick it, you ingest it voluntarily. It's not injected into your bloodstream. So as we can see, a lot of animals developed pretty similarly. Obviously, there's more examples for each one, like more for the elephant and the honey badger, and same for the armor and quills of the armadillo and the porcupine. But the fun thing is, and the very cool thing, is that these structures all evolved independently of each other. For example, the elephant and the honey badger don't share a common ancestor who had that thick skin who split off from, say, the armor and quills of a porcupine and armadillo. They all came from these lobe-finned fish, split off into their own unique branches, and then even in their own unique branches, they developed similar traits that function pretty much the same because they face the same environmental hazards or similar scenarios. It's called convergent evolution, which is, and once again, convergent evolution is just you arrive at the same evolutionary trait despite not inheriting it from the same ancestor. But yeah, I just find that really cool and really interesting. And these are all my references. I went through quite a lot, and even then I still didn't get through all that I wanted to. Ideally, I would have gone into like how far, let's say, an armadillo and a penguin's armor is, or a porcupine and a hedgehog are with their quills and spines, like at what point they evolved. But yeah, that's it. I hope you all enjoyed.